I rolled into Boulder in August of 1973, and I began reading about a new organization, Historic Boulder. A few years later, I was president of that organization, and I believe I still hold the record for the youngest president at age 31. When I started on the board with Historic Boulder, the Boulder Theater became an endangered property. Historic Boulder agreed to lease it for a year in order to get it landmarked and to find a sympathetic buyer. I recall the opening night when I was the popcorn maker in the historic popcorn machine. So I always tell people my initiation to the preservation was making popcorn.
I first met Dan in the mid-1980s. At that time, I was director of long-range planning for the city of Boulder, and Dan had just gotten on the landmarks board. And as a long-range planner, I have an obvious interest in historic preservation.
I became a board member of CPI back in the mid-90s. Colorado Historical Society had an obligation to train the certified local governments, but they contracted with CPI to do that work, so I devised a program to go around the state and to train the certified local governments. I became what's called a camp trainer, and I was a camp trainer for like 18 years, and I believe I was in about half the states in terms of training commissions, but that was developed as a result of what happened initially with that CPI grant from the State Historical Fund.
And I think the thing about Dan that I've always loved is he's a spark plug. This is a guy who has an idea about something that he sees that needs to be done, and he begins it. It really wasn't until Dan was on planning board and then on city council that we ended up with what we have today, which is a downtown historic district with full review of any project.
Well, I think people who come to the Pearl Street and the Mall may not be there if all the other attributes were there except contemporary buildings. It provides the flavor, it makes it work. It helps one get a sense of place, that this is my community.
Without the respect for the history of the downtown, Boulder would not be the same place.
You know, I still, after all these years, to go into these downtowns, I have to smile. It makes me feel at home.